G'day friends and fans, welcome to Dave Talk Stuff Ukraine War Update for the 9th of November 2025. I'm your host, the author David Applegate, author of the books The Boyhood of Cade, Power Games Into the Osbound, and The Erotic Tales from the Empire. Part 1 out now, Part 2 coming soon. All my links are in the link tree, description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. Really appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you to all those who support the channel. Alright, so the war continues, and the war of words continues, and Ukraine has their sob story. But, you know, over the years, both Russia and Ukraine have fired drones and missiles at each other, with Russia firing the majority and inflicting the majority of damage. Ukrainian crybaby said that the Russian forces upset their fifis, but they actually admit that they targeted power stations for a change. The Ukrainian Ministry of Defense, however, did not keep up their story, as Voldemort had a sob on X about Russia striking a building. Well, that's what you get for jamming their drones, right? And of course he goes on to his phony condolences. Now, Hungary has said that it has made a mistake. They said they had an indefinite waiver. That's not true. We'll get onto that later. Not right. Ukraine wants action. Now, of course, Zelensky is the pull-string doll. You remember Toy Story pull-string doll? There's a Putin in my boot. Slava Ukrainia. Give me more money. Start World War III. Send your kids to die. You do know the birth rate of every white country is now below the death rate. We are going extinct. We do not, and yet here we are watching Ukraine and Russia kill each other, and while the UK beats their chest, they're killing themselves. Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, you know, none of the major politicians for the last 50 years has done nothing about drugs, overdoses, suicide, or murder, right? White children have been murdered, and more white children were murdered in the UK than born, and yet Keir Starmer wants to talk about Islamophobia. Ukraine wants to talk about putting pressure on Moscow to stop its reckless attacks. You know, yesterday Ukraine attacked a nuclear power station in Russia, right? Is that a reckless attack? Or is this a case of rules for Putin, but not for Zelensky? Zelensky, no rules for me. Pull the door sting. There's a Putin in my boot. To Zelensky, once again, I ask you to believe in my lies. I'm not Stalin. I'm Ukrainian. And Stalin wasn't Russian. All right, so we look at the battle map because Zelensky may lie. Putin may not tell us everything that's going on either. But what we do know, blackouts in Kiev due to Russian strikes. Ukraine has struck several places, including Sevastopol, in Crimea, and a couple of other places in the Rostov. All right, but again, the Russians have also struck many places in Ukraine. They've struck the power plant at Kursk again, struck other cities as well. Now, there is fighting in... Now, Sim, you got a pass today, But there's renewed an increase in fighting, and Russia's made small gains in the buffer zone in the Sumy area. Renewed fighting, nothing really. Maybe a little bit in. I mean, this is going to be the slowest the Russians have moved in a long time in the Kharkiv area. Okay, renewed fighting in parts of the Kupiansk area, but not in Kupiansk. We don't know what's going on, but this could be due to weather. Although there is fighting in other parts, the offensive continues near Lyman and Svetsk. No gains. Druzhevka has been hit. Krok's has been hit. Fighting in the area in and around Konsk, though no significant gains, and nothing of consequence north of Myriad. Now, according to the Russians, they're still fighting in parts of Pavlovsk, and that they control more of Pavlovsk than Zelensky's letting on, and that the Ukrainians, as I said yesterday, the Ukrainians are retreating, but there are still thousands trapped in Pavlovsk, and if they don't surrender, time is running out. They'll either starve or freeze as temperatures plummet. They're cut off from supplies. Some have crept out through the night, as I suspected, but others have dug in, and actually they've tried to reinforce positions. Now, the Russians have made small gains around the map, and as you can see, they're closing on Hulapol very quickly, and they're still trying to secure the road to Zaporozhye now for a couple of years, with no major success. Slow month. Not many towns captured in the last week. Ukrainian troops, however, you see burnt out vehicles, roads are covered in debris, roadsides with ludicrous amounts of razor wire. And according to the Russians, they can no longer leave Pavlovsk. Now, it's hard to say, but they're looking at this wire and the photos. I would say the Russians have deployed the wire recently, but a lot of these traps are old. I would say some of them are Ukrainian. Probably a lot of the vehicles, something really heavy copped it right there, has been cleared. I would say that it's brief battles through the day. Look at the weather. Right? Poor visibility, poor temperatures. I think fighting would be reduced to a few hours a day. Most of the time, everybody's hunkered around the little gas stoves. And right now, people are probably trying to decide their fate. I think a lot of Ukrainians don't know what's going on. I think a lot of Ukrainian supporters don't care as long as it's not their kids. But you're wiping out Ukraine by continuing this war. And the US insists that Hungary's waiver is only for a year, according to Reuters, according to the White House, and according to the White House report yesterday, which I reported on. Now, I don't know why Budapest seems to think that they have an indefinite sanction exemption for Russian oil and gas when it's not indefinite. It's definitely only a year. Now, again, the statement by the Hungarian Foreign Minister doesn't match Viktor Orban's statement or Trump's statement, Now, what I think is again, this is the Turkish-Russian pipeline. Now, I believe what is confused is about the transfer, right? For now, 8.5 billion cubic meters of gas is transferred to Hungary, along with 5 million tons of oil, right? And what it is they're running out their contract. But in the future, I think what I'm saying is that this should be, that this is directly or indirectly going to be a transfer of Turkish oil or oil from other ports into this pipeline, and that the pipeline stays, but this is the Turkish pipeline that's providing Hungary, but it won't be, but the supply end won't be Russian gas and oil. Again, because they're not saying the specifics, and again, this is the Russian news agency, but it's weird that the Russians are reporting this discrepancy, and actually they don't seem to be bothered that they're losing a customer, or potentially losing a customer. We don't know what's happening in a year's time. We don't know what peace deal there could be in the pipes, so to speak. But one thing I do know is that Poland has made another mistake. Now, the Polish president made a very reasonable move, okay? Ban extremists who promote totalitarian ideologies. Okay, this includes the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists and the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. Should not be a problem. These were Nazi collaborators. They've also sought to ban extreme communists. I said extreme, by the way. They've sought to ban many groups. The Bandera group should not be controversial. Except it is. There is denial that this group collaborated with the Nazis. They claim that they still exist and provide limited assistance to Ukrainian citizens. And that they, even though the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists talk about a pure fascist state, and they assisted the not good guys in carrying out programs of executions in the early stages of the invasion of the Soviet Union. And afterwards, obviously, they one of the biggest massacres of the war was estimate between 40 and 100,000 Polish citizens, because of the poor records at the time. Nobody's sure how many died in the massacre, how many died in the disregard for civilians on both sides. But it's fairly recognised now, although it took until 2016, to recognise that Ukraine took part in the genocide. Now, the problem is Ukraine, in particularly their president, says that he never heard of these models, that these were not taught in school. So, according to Zelensky, if he didn't learn it in school, it didn't happen! So, Zelensky didn't read about the... Let's see. What major events would he have not heard about in school? You think about it. So they all didn't happen. Right? Let me guess. Zelensky didn't read about the Nigerian murders of Christians. Therefore it didn't happen. The Lebanese Civil War. Nope, didn't read about that in school, so it didn't happen. You know, this guy's a fucking loser. How can anybody support? How can he get elected But then again, you look at many politicians and you ask yourself, how the hell did they get elected? Now, some of it, of course, is and then, of course, you realise it's not an IQ test, it's a popularity contest. But, for Christ's sake, Zelensky calls these veterans national heroes and freedom fighters because they opposed the Russians. Like, that is not true. Ukraine is such a pathetic state. And Europe needs to get off its high horse and realise that Ukraine is not our ally. It's a parasite. It's a tick under our foot. And then Zelensky is a monumental embarrassment. So NATO wants to deploy 800,000 troops. Excuse me, World War I, okay? The British started a rumour in France, right, that Russia was amassing troops on the German border. The Russians were told by the British that the Germans were amassing troops on the border. Now, the Germans were sending troops to Austria-Hungary to help put down the riots. But then France declares war on Germany. You start to see a pattern, right? Britain, Rishi Sunak, and others, okay? There's no one person to blame here, but the British establishment starts rumours about Russia, and starts courting Ukraine and pandering to Ukrainian nationalists. And then comes in Biden, Obama. And who's the common denominator in World War I and World War II and recent times? That's right, the banking mafia that controls Britain. Right? The British establishment. Okay? They get their current agent of influence, George Soros, and now Alex Soros, to push for war in Eastern Europe. As if we do not have enough problems as it is, we have an aging retard who wants to deploy 800,000 NATO troops to the Russian border in a hypothetical employment to defend Germany. No, to trigger war. Russia possesses a large-scale military potential despite the war in Ukraine. Yes, which is why you shouldn't deploy. You stand... Okay, the militarization, 400 billion. Where's it coming from? You don't have it. It's 4 times, nearly 3.5 times what Russia spends. And that's just Germany. For rearmament. Now, why do they need to spend so much on rearmament? I thought Germany was armed. It turns out, right, all this defence money they spend just goes into the payroll. Just goes into maintenance. Nothing is really built. All these programs, all these missiles and all these weapons, and what they do, they blow it every couple of years, they blow it all up. Keep building more. So they're training for a war that shouldn't happen, that's totally preventable. They should have, against a country who has less stockpiles of everything but nuclear weapons than Eastern Europe. Okay, right? Eastern Europe has more arms than Russia. This is a proven fact. No, Germany wants to start a war so that Eastern Europe is weakened by the war so they can move in and strengthen their economy by taking all the resources and rebuilding in the post-war era, just like they did in World War One, World War Two. It was all about killing off the white man so they could bring in cheap labour and rebuild and then pocket all the profit. Because the monetary mafia want to kill us all off. Full stop. They've said it. Okay? They've said it. How many times have you heard a feminist or some ecologist talking about there's too many people on the planet? But they talk about us, not the Africans they fed for the last 50 years to quadruple their population, not the Indians they fed for the last 50 years to quadruple their population, or the Chinese to quadruple their population. No, our population hasn't even doubled because it's hidden. Our population decline has become visible. New York is only 25% white. Detroit, LA, Baltimore, Washington. And yet, everybody wants to pretend that there's nothing wrong. But finally, somebody says, you know what, we better stop. We're risking war. We've got to stop arming Ukraine. We're risking more. Everybody's losing their mind. Oh, Ukraine's losing. More arms, more arms, more. And now they're talking about more men. Every day, Zelensky, pull the string. I want you to start World War III so I can play like a winner. Zelensky's not a Ukrainian. He's a Russian Jew. He has stated many times that he wants war with Russia. He's stated many times he wants to fundamentally change Europe. He wants to be Captain Sky Shield of Europe. It's all about creating fear. So instead of having starships and bases on the moon and trips to Mars, no, we have to hunker down and hide in a bunker because Zelensky needs to feel powerful. We've had not one, not two, but 5 dark ages, okay? People haven't recognised that in every 100 or so years we've had major wars that have ended in catastrophe for Europe. Napoleon, World War I, World War II, the Napoleon Wars, the collapse of Rome, the collapse of Greece, those all resulted in 100 or so years of non-growth. And in that time, millions died from either starvation or disease. Or just simply murdered by roving bandits. But the rich don't care because they're in their castles going, ho ho ho, I'm on the gold, I am so good. But they're not Europeans. We are occupied by a cabal of psychopaths. And the populations don't seem to want to know. They want to bury their head in the sand and say, I just want to get to retirement and sit in my busy fishing boat. All this cope is killing. Okay? The other day they asked a veteran of World War II what he felt about society today. He spat and said, we wasted our lives for nothing. So great, we don't speak German, yeah, but you go downtown and they don't speak, and you hear 80 languages other than English. Okay, you're occupied. You are now the puppets of foreign colonizers have united against you, and under the guise of United Nations, one world order, which is turning the entire world into one single mud, okay? One single mud race ruled by an elite cadre. Wait a minute, I've heard this story before. Yeah, it's called The Time Machine, H.G. Wells, look it up. H.G. Wells was a eugenicist who tried to warn us about, who found out what the... See, I think he was probably well-intentioned, like so many, thinking, well, they're not going to live a good life, that we should take steps to make sure that only those of good breeding succeed in life, and therefore we get rid of all the world's ills by getting rid of the poor and the disabled, without realizing who's going to do your job, who's going to work in your factories. Well, see, this is the problem. These academics, we do not need them. We just need to sit around and read our poetry. Politicians, we just sit in parliament and debate. And this is the problem. Nothing gets done. This is why they're angry at Trump. This is why they're angry at Putin. This is why they're angry at Orban. This is why they're angry at from Reform. God, now I forgot his name. I apologise. And the name will come to me. There are few politicians. This is why they are angry at Argentina. Because the money mafia don't want successful politicians. They want cowards in office to do nothing. They want Chuck Schumers and Hakeem Jeffries and other colonisers who don't belong in the West. Okay? You can take it as you will, but the West has destroyed itself in the name of diversity. Every multicultural society, Greece, Rome, the United Kingdom, the British Empire, and probably, I would say, the worst offender for multiculturalism was the Mongols. They all were torn apart. Sorry, Alexander as well. Were all torn apart by multiculturalism, because every culture turned around and says, I want my own country now. You see this in California. You see this in parts of Africa now. You let them in. They say, we just want a new life. And then 3 generations later, they're running your country, running your government, and bringing in more and more of their own every day. That's how the Indians leveraged Britain to create the Third British Empire. The first was built on trade. The second was expanded on by war. The third was expanding on the territories they seized through even more war, primarily with Indian troops. And now you look at Africa, all the Indians, all the way from Africa. That's the British Empire. It's actually the British Indian Empire. You've been played for mugs, okay? Why? Because you're so afraid. You're killing yourselves out of fear. Women, oh, but I want to party! I want a job! Well, so many people out now realise that they were betrayed by feminism. Maybe it's too late for some. It's not too late for most of you. Get a life now. Get off the treadmill. Get off this 2-income, 5-job, kill yourself for the boss mentality. Get rid of the 6 to 6 mentality. 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. 6 days a week. We can build a better world just by ditching the socialist world. This idea that the government owes you. Because if the government owes you, the government owns you. And if you look at Ukraine, look what happens when the government owns you. You are nothing but a disposable commodity. They sit you in a building, give you a cut lunch, a pair of boots, and a helmet, and maybe enough ammunition to last to the end of the day. And for 70% of those kids, they will not become fathers. And that's just what happened. And that's why it is so important to end this war. But so many of you out there won't even watch the first 5 minutes of this. Nobody wants the truth anymore. But I'm going to keep speaking it, folks. Thank you to the few of you who have made it this far. Please like, share, and subscribe. Please support the channel. Support me on Ko-Fi. Buy my books. Buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree. Description below, in my profile, or scan the QR code on the screen. I appreciate each and every one of you. Stand firm, stand fast, and let's reclaim civilization. Bye for now.